Williams, and I want to welcome you today to the program called Inspiring Generations. Today we'll be discussing history from the 1800s that's very controversial and hardly spoken about. Here at the Chelsea Senior Center, we have been brave enough to attack these controversial subjects, and we have enjoyed every bit of Black history at the Senior Center. We've had an overwhelming response from our community in participation. Just last year, in 2020, we had the largest participation of seniors in Chelsea participate in the Black History Month, and we were so appreciative to those people. During this program, I will be mentioning some of those people. I will be calling your name out, and if you know who you are and you know you participated, give yourself a big hand and a clap. But right now, I have a very interesting guest in the studio today. She is a former program coordinator at the Chelsea Senior Center. She also has brought so many people together. I remember first meeting her at my poetry class and how we've had some beautiful conversations. I met people in poetry that I would have never met if I wouldn't have took up the subject of poetry, which I love so much. And it's dear to Marianne as well. So we have that in common. Second of all, she is here in the studio with us today. I want to welcome to the show today Miss Marianne Ramos.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a real honor.
Yes, it's great to have you, Marianne. Marianne, as you know, our poetry class was a generational poetry class.
It was.
I was inspired to be there amongst Maddie, Miss Helen, Ann O'Keefe, and you know the name of the third lady.
Yeah, there was Miss Ellen Palos.
Yes.
As well. And there was other people who sometimes joined and sometimes didn't. But I want to say, when you speak of, it was a variety of people. It was a small group, intimate group. But Maddie, you just mentioned, came all the way from Nepal. And somehow we connected in this class, and I'm so glad. What Celeste is going to develop in this conversation is how we started to know each other, which led to other things.
Exactly, Marianne. And that was seeing that Black history was ignored in a way that seniors wasn't getting the full benefit of learning about the figures that were up on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I mentioned that to you. I said, Marianne, can we develop something where it's a learning process for seniors too? Because they're the matriarch of their family and they take back this information to their families, we would like to engage them in Black history, and so we did.
Yes.
And our first program was Marcus Garvey.
It was. There is even a little more that had to happen first. First, I had to go and speak to the director, Miss Nowicki, and say, Celeste has a great idea. Marcus Garvey is not well known or understood by many mainstream people who go to high school, and they're not necessarily scholars of history. So she didn't know for sure who he was. But anyway, we brought in Celeste, and we clinched the deal, and we had 4 years. It became a wonderful routine for all of us, something to look forward to. And each year focused on someone different. But Marcus Garvey was the beginning. It was small and intimate, but it was very international. The seniors that come to the center are often from other nations, not just this one. So we have maybe half, at least, sometimes a majority of Latinos. We have people from many other places in the world, including the Philippine Islands, Cape Verde, and on and on.
Yes.
So one of Celeste's challenges was to present Black history to an international audience of the senior age.
And how do we do that? From my opinion, you know, an inspiration that I got from, you know, all the feedback I got from all the elders at the senior center, because before I even did the project, I interviewed every senior that was not Latino, that was Polish, Irish, Italian, to see how going forward with the Black History subject would even, you know, take at the senior center. My introduction to you was, let's travel.
Yes.
Let's travel through history. Let's travel with the person we're speaking about. And when we start traveling, this story about Marcus Garvey is so amazing. If you walked in his shoes and traveled in his shoes, you would have started off in Jamaica on a beautiful sunny island. You know, and as a youth, we discussed that things affect you when you're young. To all the youth out there that's listening to this program, things affect you when you're young that might impact the way you are when you're older. And Marcus Garvey had some controversial things that happened to him when he was a young man, and Marianne, I discussed that.
Mm-hmm.
And where did we go after we left Jamaica?
One of the many stops on I think on the program was Central America.
Can we talk about that a little bit?
Let's do that.
In Central America, what did Marcus Garvey do?
He was there as a journalist. He had a great passion for what the common ground of people of African origin all over the hemisphere and all over the globe, which was in those days a brand new idea. And he was there, I believe, to do research and journalism, and also to be a witness. Those of you who watch Henry Louis Gates today, some of what he was doing was like Henry Louis Gates. I won't say all of it, but he was, you know, trying to get information so he could share that knowledge with others.
Yes. And that was an amazing journey, just going from Jamaica, and now you found yourself in Costa Rica.
Yes.
So now we're following his journey, and the story gets more interesting, and it makes his history more interesting, because he winds up in London.
Mm-hmm.
And in London, if you've ever traveled to London, I don't know how many people out there have traveled to London.
Not me.
Have you ever traveled to London?
Not yet.
But if you travel to London, there's more Black history in London than there is in America. So his travels to London must have been, right? Must have been like so interesting. He must have found like artifacts from Egypt and all those places in London, because that's where most of it is right now.
You know, Celeste, I think if we talked about the time frame,
You want to talk about the time frame?
that would help our audience really picture this.
Okay, so we're talking about 1800s.
Yeah.
Marcus Garvey was born in 1857.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Costa Rica from 1912 to 1914.
Yes.
And then on his journey to London, he stayed for a brief time, and he wound up reading the book by Booker T. Washington called Up from Slavery, right?
Yes.
And then he had an idea. I'm going to build a school in my country. I want to build a school back in Jamaica. This is around 1915. Booker T. Washington is on his last limb about now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's on his deathbed. But Marcus Garvey is going to come to America to raise funds for his school in Jamaica, but he wants to find Booker T. Washington
Yes.
so he can get some advice about how to build this school. So that's the time frame.
Yes.
Winding up in America in 1916.
After a long journey on a steamboat.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
that when we think of those days, nothing was easy and nothing was instant.
Not at all. I agree with you 100%. it must have not been an easy time for him to maneuver the way he did. But him being a journalist has the power of words.
Yes.
And if you can control the power of words, it's an amazing thing because words can be harmful.
Yes.
Words can make you happy.
Yes.
And so he controlled the narrative of how black people were going to be
Yeah.
and how black people should be. A lot of his speeches were on self-reliance, as you know. I'm sure the people of Costa Rica got the message in those times, self-reliance. A lot of countries did that read his material. But in America, his ideas wasn't accepted like it was in Central America. In Central America, his ideas were more prominent. You know, he wrote for a newspaper called La Prensa
In Costa Rica.
in Panama,
In Panama.
which you know I have deep roots of.
Yes, that's one of
Panama.
Celeste's special cultural heritages is Panama.
Exactly. So, did you enjoy that celebration, even though it was small? Did it inspire you?
It inspired me because you took someone who was not well understood in this country, mostly because of the time frame. What was considered very, very scary, communistic, revolutionary in those days, today is often very normal to most of our consciousness. But in his time frame, he was a very bold and brave pioneer. What I really loved about it as well is the way you did it. Because Celeste was multi-artistic during the whole thing. She had painted some tropical pictures to make a bridge between herself and her audience, including Latinos and Filipinos, to say, hey, we have this tropicalness in common.
Yeah, we had that tropicalness in common. And then his story is so great, Marcus Garvey, because immigration at that time,
Yes.
in those days, immigration was unbelievable. One strike and you're out.
Yet many people in those days, if they immigrated by the old steamships, some of them died on the way.
Yeah.
But when they got there, the ship's surgeon, who was like the immigration guy, and at the same time, he could pick and choose. This one I want to keep, this one goes back. So it was a suspenseful situation.
Yeah, and then we got to, after we traveled and we connected through, hey, we're more alike than different. When we connected on that level, and then to know that in the early 1900s, someone that came to do good in America, that thought they were doing good, to help the African Americans that were coming up from the Great Migration,
Yes.
to help them be self-reliant, you would think that people would have appreciated that
You would
economically.
Yes. And just to think in the terms of his times that he lived, many people that he knew had been enslaved. He was in the same time frame as many of the people that are better known, including, I'm thinking Frederick Douglass.
Yeah, 1818.
Although let's just say Frederick Douglass was very elder
Yeah.
when Marcus was young.
Yeah.
But there is a
definitely.
continuity of history between people who came here under the worst conditions, not by choice, and all of the trauma of slavery. And that was fresh. That was a very fresh situation in people's personal memories.
Yeah.
So one of his great challenges was to talk about self-determination for people who had no access to self-determination before.
This much is true, and that's what I got out of the journey as well. As I traveled with you and the other seniors that were in the audience. It was an amazing program, and I really enjoyed it. What I didn't get to say about that program is how you connected as well to Marcus Garvey.
Well, if you want to go there,
Yes.
I was a young woman in the well, I was still actually a youth in the 60s. And there was a movement called the Black Muslims who were not well understood in the mainstream America, but I lived in urban America, so I was very, very exposed, and I used to read their newspaper. And their newspaper the same idea that Marcus Garvey had about a separate homeland. They had a dream of having a separate homeland. This is in the days of Malcolm X, in the days of Elijah Fard Muhammad, who was the leader of that movement. So the homeland idea, this was before Malcolm X finished his journey and got some new highlights and inspirations before he died. But the separate homeland has been historical. When you look at the nation of Liberia, I was just with somebody from Liberia last week, how that was the first idea of a separate homeland. So people don't have to see this as a hate story.
Yeah.
It's not a hating other people's story as much as loving yourself story.
Yes, exactly. And that's what the main focus of bringing that history forward is, the part of loving yourself. There's nothing wrong with loving your nationality. You know, there's nothing wrong with loving yourself. It's been a great discussion with you on the topic of Marcus Garvey. And we know that, you know, in his day that there were different things going on in America that we're still going to discuss through the course of this program that inspired generations to come and bring us forth to where we are today. You and I have had the pleasure of marching together.
Yes.
Oh, did I mention, Marianne, you're retired this year.
I certainly did. Ricky covered that. I had a special show, a farewell,
Did you?
A farewell and hello show.
Oh my God.
Yes.
And you know, I get to say to you, I'm sad because every program that you've given besides Black History Month has been an inspiration to me. I've learned so much about other cultures by the Senior Center embracing everyone that comes through their doors.
It's been a
And then-
privilege. It really has been
Yeah.
a joy. It's been a passion for me to do these things.
Yeah, and I'm sure. So we're gonna wrap it up in conversation, and we have a statement that I'm gonna be asking everybody that comes
But
on the
Celeste,
program.
is there one little thing I could sneak in here?
Sure, go ahead.
That first episode ended beautifully because Celeste got out Bob Marley's One Love. And she was playing the One Love, dancing
Oh,
along,
yes.
to kind of let people know that this is a story about love and loving yourself as well as you
Yeah.
love others.
And someone loving their people so much that they forfeit going back to their own country to do what they're supposed to do in their own country and stay here and start loving America so much to want to, you know, make an economic impact here, which was great too. But like I said, his story is very controversial. If you want to know more about Marcus Garvey, you can load him up on YouTube. There's books at the Chelsea Library, and tons of speeches by Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Today we have a special statement, though, Marianne, that we're going to send out to our audience,
Okay.
and it's by JFK. So, Marianne, what is the most inspirational words that JFK said in one of his speeches?
There's many, but I think you encapsulated it with "ask not," because
Yes.
people haven't heard that for a while. And
No,
maybe
they
we
haven't.
need to, because so much has been offered us in these modern days. But like Marcus Garvey and the other figures in history that you were exploring in the series, they had a sense of giving more than taking.
Yes.
And I think whenever even today, if we can give, maybe not to Washington, but tax time is here, but
Yeah.
if we just give to our neighbor,
Yes.
even the gift of listening,
Yes.
even the gift of respecting, that is transformative. That can make life better for that person, who will then pass it on to someone else.
Exactly. So we will ask the question, ask not what your country can do for you,
Yeah.
but what you can do for your country. And that's in service to anyone that wants to go out there and make this country better, be better, because we are better. And I would like to thank Miss Marianne Ramos for coming today and talking with us about the subject of Marcus Garvey. And we had many subjects that we have done together, and I would like to do more in conversation with Miss Marianne Ramos. But I have to say I love you.
Me too. COVID style.
And I'm happy that I got an opportunity to learn so much from you. And I wanted to just put my arms around you and hug you, but like you said, it's COVID. There's a lot of things I can say, and I know we're running out of time. So I'm going to wrap it up. And on that note, we will see you again.
Thank you, Celeste, and believe me, the feeling is mutual. You are an inspiration to me, and I think many, many other people in the city.
Well, thank you, Marianne, and thank you for coming. Welcome back to Inspiring Generations. I'm here with my next guest, Paris. Paris is a community service worker in the community of Chelsea. And he has inspired me so much by his volunteer service. Paris, how long have you been volunteering?
I've been volunteering for 5 years out here in Chelsea, but before that, I was volunteering in South Boston for about 5 years with the community service out there with the kids at Teenage Center in D Street, South Boston, Mass.
So you have a lot of experience in giving back to your community.
Yes, I do. I try my best to do as much as I can, for everybody, old, young, it doesn't matter. As long as God give me the will, I can do whatever I have to do.
So you and I have discussed some instances that happened along your journey of volunteerism. In the community of Chelsea, you faced some discriminatory things. How did that affect you?
Well, it affected me at first. I was upset and mad about it, but, I prayed to God and I thought, if I put it in God's hands, everything will be all right. I was called a name that was not nice for any person, but, I pray for those people, and I hope that God touches their heart so that it just doesn't happen again. That's all. That's all. I just want the best for everybody.
Yes. Being someone that comes from, that same energy that has been given out, I've faced discrimination plenty of times in my life, so I feel what you're going through. I know how tough it's been to even find a job, in this community for someone of color. How do you feel about that? Do you think that we should be able to gain more equity?
Yes, I do. I feel like if we had some type of support where we can do things more for the community, like especially what you're doing, and you're doing this, cleaning the square and everything like that. I want to try to help you where you can get more people in, and we can, probably start some type of foundation or something like that to clean the community.
Yes, because, as you know, sometimes our city workers can't keep up with most of the trash that's around the area, and you guys do a great job.
Well, that's where we come in at. You
guys do a great
every
job.
little bit counts.
Yeah,
So
you guys
every
do a
little bit
great
counts.
job helping out. I know the DPW guys love you. I've heard so many
Thanks, I know.
good feedback from them saying how much you're such a great guy for helping out around the community. But what inspires you? Do you have any heroes in Black history that inspire you?
My hero is my mother.
Your mom.
Because my mom, no matter what, my mother's with me every day.
Yes.
She taught me everything, how to be a man. My father, we was there once in a while, but my mother is my mother and my father. So I thank my mother for everything. And this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
This is just the beginning.
Yeah. Amazing. I love your story. You know, I felt compelled to have this dialogue with you.
Thank
So
you.
our audience out there will know.
Thank you very
that
much,
you see
everybody.
Paris, any seniors out there, he's known for carrying out bags and boxes and asking us if we need anything. So, you know, now that you see him here talking with me, he's not a total stranger. And he will be around still in the community,
Yes.
helping out. And you'll probably see him picking up things out of the planters and off the ground sometime, but this is the things that we do in service.
It's for the community. It's all for y'all.
And so, you know, as I asked my last guest, we was talking about what JFK said, you know, in one of his famous speeches. And it was like, ask, not.
What you can do for your country, but what your country can
Ask
do for
not
you.
what your country can do for you.
I think it should be both ways.
Should be both. Thank you, Paris, for coming today.
Thank you.
It was awesome talking to you. You
God
know,
bless you.
always
God
a
bless
pleasure to, you know, encounter when I'm out there on the streets, you know, doing my thing. It was nice to have you come in the studio.
Thank you for having me. And love the whole Chelsea.
What can you say before we close
I want to say,
to some youth out there about community service?
I want to say to the youth out there, you can do anything. It don't matter what you try, what you do. As long as it's positive, you can do it. And God bless you. Don't ever give up.
Thank you once again, and see you next time on Inspiring Generations.